In the heart of a bustling city, the warmth of a local cafe offered a refuge from the constant hum of urban life. This unassuming space, with its worn wooden tables and the comforting aroma of freshly ground coffee, had become a gathering spot for a variety of patrons. Students hunched over textbooks, professionals tapping away on laptops, and elderly couples sharing quiet conversations. Amid this familiar backdrop, a solitary figure sat tucked away in a corner booth, sketchbook open, pencil moving with deliberate strokes. The cafe, known simply as the Nook, it had never been known for celebrity visits or grand events. Its charm lay in its simplicity, a place where time seemed to slow, and each cup of coffee was a small ritual. The barista, a young woman named Clara, moved behind the counter with practiced ease, her smile brightening the room despite the early morning chill outside. She barely glanced toward the corner where the mysterious figure sat, focused instead on the steady stream of orders and the subtle clink of ceramic mugs. Yet the figure did not go unnoticed entirely. A few regular patrons had cast curious glances in the direction of the quiet artist, their whispers blending with the soft jazz music playing overhead. Whispers that spoke of a name rarely uttered in public, Elias Hart, a painter whose works had captivated the art world but whose presence was as elusive as a shadow. For years, Elias had shunned the spotlight, retreating from galleries and social circles, retreating into the safety of anonymity. No one in the cafe knew for certain if it was truly Elias who sat sketching. It was just a rumor, fueled by the distinctive style visible even in the rough outlines on the page. The artist's features were mostly hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat and a scarf wrapped tightly against the chill, but the intensity in the eyes, the way the hand moved with practiced grace, suggested a master at work. Clara, busy wiping down the counter, finally allowed herself a moment to glance over. There was something about the air around the figure that was different from the usual customers, an aura of quiet intensity mixed with a hint of vulnerability. She found herself wondering what had drawn this elusive artist to her humble cafe, far from the galleries and glittering events that normally defined his world. As she approached with a freshly brewed cup of espresso, the artist looked up, meeting her gaze briefly before returning to the sketchbook. "Thank you," it came a soft voice, barely above a whisper, carrying an accent that Clara couldn't quite place. "It's no problem at all," she replied, setting the cup down gently. "We don't get many artists here, but it's a great place to find inspiration. Do you come here often?" The artist hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Not often. I prefer quiet places where I can think without being disturbed." Clara nodded, understanding more than she said. The cafe had always been a sanctuary for many who sought a moment away from the relentless pace of life. "Well, you're welcome anytime," she said warmly before moving back behind the counter. Unbeknownst to Clara, a regular customer seated nearby had been watching the exchange with keen interest. A middle-aged man named Martin, known for his sharp memory and love of local gossip, recognized the sketchbook's distinctive cover peeking out from beneath the artist's coat. His eyes widened in surprise as he whispered to the woman at the next table, "That's Elias Hart." "I'm sure of it." Word spread quickly through the cafe, quiet murmurs growing louder as more patrons turned to look. The air shifted from calm comfort to a buzz of excitement. For a place that had never hosted a celebrity, the presence of Elias Hart was an unexpected thrill. Meanwhile, the artist, now aware of the growing attention, felt a familiar tightness in the chest, a mix of anxiety and frustration. The desire for anonymity was at odds with the instinct to create and be seen, yet the sudden spotlight threatened the very peace that had drawn him here. Clara noticed the change immediately. The casual atmosphere had shifted, and patrons who had once been content to sip their coffee and read now leaned forward, eager for a glimpse or a word from the mysterious visitor. She moved quickly to diffuse the tension, offering smiles and gentle reminders that this was a place for calm and respect. Just as the excitement reached a peak, the entrance bell chimed, and a young woman carrying a camera bag stepped inside. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on the artist in the corner. Without hesitation, she approached the counter, introducing herself as a reporter from a prominent city magazine. "I heard Elias Hart might be here," as she said, voice tinged with surprise and anticipation. "I'm hoping to get an exclusive interview. It's not every day we get to speak with someone who's been so reclusive." The artist's eyes narrowed slightly, the faintest hint of weariness crossing his face. Clara exchanged a quick glance with the regulars, sensing the delicate balance between public interest and personal privacy was about to be tested. As the reporter settled into a nearby seat, preparing her notepad and camera, the cafe seemed to hold its breath. The quiet sanctuary was no longer just a refuge for a solitary artist, but a stage set for a conflict between the need to create in solitude and the allure, an intrusion, of fame. The scene was set, the players in place. The mysterious figure in the corner, once hidden beneath layers of scarf and hat, was about to navigate a world that demanded answers yet threatened to unravel the very peace he sought. And within the walls of the Nook, the simple act of sketching had become the catalyst for a story that would ripple far beyond the cozy confines of the cafe. The cafe had barely settled into its usual rhythm when Martin, the regular with an uncanny knack for recognizing faces, leaned a little closer to the woman beside him. His voice, low but laced with excitement, cut through the murmur of conversations. "I'm telling you, that's Elias Hart. Look at the sketchbook cover. No one else uses that design." His words rippled through the cafe like a sudden gust of wind, stirring curiosity into a rising tide of whispers. People who had been engrossed in their laptops or lost in novels now found their attention pulled irresistibly toward the corner booth. The once subtle presence of the mysterious artist was becoming the center of attention. Clara wiped her hands on a towel, glancing nervously toward the corner. The artist's head was bent low over the sketchbook, hands moving swiftly as if trying to capture something fleeting. She could see the tension in the slight stiffening of his shoulders, the quick glances over the rim of his hat. It was clear the quiet sanctuary he had sought was unraveling. Suddenly, a voice cut through the soft jazz and the clinking of cups. "Elias Hart," he had called out tentatively from a nearby table. A young woman, her face alight with recognition and a hint of awe, edged closer. "Are you really him?" The artist looked up sharply, eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. The cafe seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a subtle shake of his head and a faint smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, he replied, "I prefer to remain anonymous." The declaration hung in the air, but it did little to stem the growing wave of excitement. Cameras flashed silently as patrons discreetly pulled out their phones, snapping photos, eager to capture this rare moment. At that instant, the cafe door swung open with a chime that cut through the buzz. A woman stepped inside, her presence commanding attention. Clad in a tailored coat and carrying a professional camera bag, she scanned the room with practiced precision. Her eyes locked on the figure in the corner, and a determined smile curved her lips. "I'm looking for Elias Hart," as she announced as she approached the counter where Clara stood. "I'm from the City Times. I heard he might be here. I'm hoping for an exclusive interview." Clara's smile faltered slightly, sensing the shift from casual curiosity to something more intrusive. "He's here, yes," as she replied cautiously. "But he values his privacy." The reporter nodded, undeterred. "I understand, but the public has been eager to know what he's been working on. His silence has only deepened the mystery, and I think people would appreciate hearing from him directly." The artist's eyes flicked up, catching the conversation. A faint trace of weariness passed over his features, as though the weight of years behind the elusive persona pressed down in that moment. He closed his sketchbook with a soft snap and gently set it aside. Clara moved toward him quietly, her voice low but firm. "They're not here to cause trouble. Maybe just some space?" He nodded, appreciating her discretion. Yet, as the reporter settled into a chair nearby, pulling out a notepad and pen, the tension in the air thickened. Several patrons now watched with rapt attention, some leaning forward as if witnessing a rare unveiling. The artist's gaze swept the room, taking in the eager faces, the silent cameras, the whispered speculations. For a moment, the weight of fame he had long avoided pressed heavily upon him. The reporter broke the silence with a gentle question. "Elias, can you tell us why you chose this cafe? What draws you away from the galleries and the spotlight?" He hesitated, fingers tightening briefly around the armrest. Then, in a voice that was low but clear, he began. "I come here because it's quiet. Because here, I can see the world without being seen. Inspiration isn't found under bright lights or flashing cameras. It's found in moments like this, in the simple flow of life." Her pencil moved rapidly, capturing his words, while the cafe seemed to lean in closer, hanging on every phrase. The barista, Clara, watched with a mix of empathy and apprehension. She understood the fragile balance between public curiosity and personal sanctuary. The artist's presence had brought excitement to the cafe, but it also threatened to unravel the peace she cherished in this small corner of the city. Another patron, an elderly man seated near the window, whispered to his companion, "It's a privilege to witness this. To see the man behind the legend speak so openly." Yet, not all were content with the sudden shift. A couple at the back exchanged uneasy glances, discomforted by the invasion of privacy. The cafe, once a haven of quiet routine, had become a stage for a subtle battle between fame and solitude. The artist's eyes met Clara's again, a silent plea for understanding. She offered a reassuring nod, signaling her support amidst the growing commotion. The reporter pressed on gently. "Do you ever regret stepping away from the public eye? Do you miss the connection with your audience?" He smiled faintly, a trace of melancholy threading through the gesture. "Sometimes. But I've learned that true connection doesn't require an audience. It requires honesty, patience, and space to breathe." The room absorbed his words, the earlier excitement settling into a contemplative hush. For a brief moment, the artist was not a distant figure of fame but a man seeking solace, a creator striving for meaning beyond the glare. Yet, as the interview continued, Clara noticed subtle signs of strain. The artist's fingers tapped nervously against the table, his gaze flickering toward the door as if weighing the possibility of escape. Suddenly, the cafe door opened again, admitting a gust of cold air and a trio of young fans, their faces flushed with excitement. They paused, spotting the artist and whispering eagerly before pulling out phones to capture the scene. The delicate balance Clara had tried to maintain shifted once more. The sanctuary was fracturing under the weight of attention. Sensing the moment, Clara stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Everyone, please remember this is a place of respect. Let's give Elias the space he needs." Her words were met with nods and murmurs of agreement, but the undercurrent of restless energy remained. The artist stood slowly, gathering his belongings with deliberate care. "Thank you all for your kindness," he said softly. "I hope you understand my need for privacy." With a final glance around the room, he slipped on his coat and hat, disappearing through the cafe door into the grey morning. As the door closed behind him, the atmosphere shifted again. The patrons exchanged looks, the buzz of excitement mingling with a newfound respect for the fragile moment they had witnessed. Clara returned behind the counter, thoughtful and quiet, the cafe settling once more into its gentle rhythm, but changed, somehow, by the brief intrusion of fame and the enduring desire for solitude. The morning light filtered softly through the cafe windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor as the patrons slowly resumed their routines. Yet, beneath the surface of this familiar scene, a subtle tension lingered. Elias Hart's brief appearance had left an indelible mark, rippling through the small community that gathered at the Nook. Conversations hummed quietly in corners, each person processing the encounter in their own way. Clara moved behind the counter with a thoughtful expression, her eyes occasionally drifting to the now empty corner booth where Elias had Saturday. The space felt charged, as if it held the memory of his presence. She wiped a mug with a cloth, steadying herself against the whirlwind of excitement and unease that had unsettled the cafe. Regular customers exchanged glances and whispered softly, their reactions as varied as their personalities. Some wore expressions of admiration, their eyes gleaming with a newfound appreciation for the man they had glimpsed, a figure both enigmatic and profoundly human. "Did you hear how he described inspiration?" a young woman murmured to her companion, her voice filled with awe. "To think that someone so famous finds solace in places like this. It makes you want to look closer at the little moments." Across the room, an elderly gentleman nodded in agreement, his lined face thoughtful. It's rare to see anyone so honest about their craft. He's not just an artist, he's searching for meaning, just like the rest of us. But not everyone shared this gentle reverence. Near the back, a couple exchanged uneasy looks, their conversation hushed but tinged with discomfort. "I don't like how this all turned out," the woman whispered, glancing toward the door through which Elias had vanished. "I come here for peace, not to be part of a spectacle." Her partner nodded reluctantly. "I get that. It's hard when someone's private life becomes public so suddenly. But I guess that's the price of fame." Clara overheard the exchange and felt a pang of sympathy. The cafe had always been a refuge, a quiet harbor from the city's relentless pace. Now, it seemed caught between two worlds, the desire for privacy and the irresistible pull of public fascination. As the morning unfolded, the reporter from the City Times remained seated at a corner table, her pen moving steadily across her notepad. Occasionally, she glanced up, capturing the atmosphere, the subtle shifts in mood around her. Clara approached her cautiously. "Are you going to publish the interview?" she asked quietly, hoping to gauge the impact the story might have on the cafe and its patrons. The reporter smiled, a mixture of professionalism and empathy in her eyes. "Yes, but I want to be respectful. Elias is a rare voice, and I want to tell his story with care. People need to understand the man behind the fame." Clara nodded, relieved. "That's good to hear. This place means a lot to the people who come here, especially those who just want a quiet moment." The reporter folded her notepad gently. "I understand. I'll do my best." Meanwhile, the patrons continued to react in their own ways. Some approached Clara with questions about the artist's visit, eager for details but careful not to pry too deeply. Others simply smiled, content to have witnessed a fleeting brush with greatness. One young man, a local art student named Theo, lingered near the counter. His eyes shone with excitement as he spoke to Clara. "Seeing Elias here, even just for a moment, it's inspiring. Makes me want to keep pushing, keep creating." Clara smiled warmly. "He's had that effect on a lot of people. But he's also very private. It's important to respect that." Theo nodded thoughtfully. "I get it. Still, it's amazing to see someone who's achieved so much still searching, still learning." As the day progressed, the cafe's atmosphere oscillated between quiet reflection and bursts of animated discussion. The presence of Elias Hart had stirred something deeper than mere curiosity. It had sparked a conversation about the nature of creativity, fame, and the delicate balance between sharing one's art and guarding one's soul. Behind the counter, Clara found herself caught between these currents. She cherished the moments of connection, the way the cafe had become a place of inspiration. Yet, she also sensed the fragility of the peace that had been disrupted. Later, as the afternoon sun cast a warm glow through the windows, a familiar figure entered, the elderly man who had spoken earlier. He approached Clara with a gentle smile. "Thank you for allowing such a moment here," he said softly. "It reminded me of why places like this matter so much. They're sanctuaries not just for artists, but for all of us seeking a little calm." Clara returned his smile, feeling the truth of his words resonate. "It's my pleasure. I hope it can continue to be that." But as evening approached, the cafe's fragile balance was tested once more. Word had begun to spread beyond its walls, carried by social media and local chatter. The reporter's article was scheduled for release the next day, promising to bring Elias Hart's elusive presence into sharper focus for the wider world. Clara found herself torn. She wanted to protect the sanctuary she had nurtured, yet she understood the power of stories to inspire and connect. That night, as the cafe emptied and the city lights flickered on, Clara sat alone at a table, reflecting on the day's events. The quiet hum of the city outside contrasted with the swirling thoughts within. She thought of Elias, the man who had sought refuge in the simple cafe, only to have his privacy breached by the very curiosity he had hoped to escape. She wondered how he would navigate the attention that was sure to follow, and whether the sanctuary he found here would survive the inevitable glare. In the stillness, Clara resolved to do what she could to preserve the delicate balance, to offer kindness and discretion to those who needed it most, and to remember that behind every story, every rumor, there was a human being searching for a place to belong. The cafe, she knew, was more than just a building. It was a living space shaped by the people who crossed its threshold and the moments they shared within its walls. And in that, there was hope, that even amid the complexities of fame and fame's demands, there could be understanding, respect, and perhaps a measure of peace. The next morning dawned with a crisp clarity, sunlight pouring through the cafe windows and illuminating the familiar interior of the Nook. Yet, beneath the surface of this everyday scene, an undercurrent of anticipation hummed softly. The article about Elias Hart was now public, circulating through the city's newsstands and social media feeds. The quiet sanctuary Clara had known was no longer untouched by the wider world's gaze. As the first patrons arrived, the atmosphere was palpably different. Conversations sparked more readily, eyes flickering toward the corner booth that had once held the elusive artist. The cafe, once a refuge of gentle anonymity, now felt like a crossroads between private solace and public intrigue. Clara moved behind the counter, her smile steady but her mind alert. She noticed the varied reactions among the customers. Some approached with reverence, others with skepticism, and a few with a hint of envy. The story had brought Elias Hart's vulnerability and search for peace into sharp relief, touching something deep within those who read it. A young woman named Sophie, who often came for early morning coffee before work, approached Clara with a thoughtful expression. "I read the article last night," as she said softly. "His words about finding freedom away from fame, it really struck me. It's like we all need a place where we can just be ourselves." Clara nodded. "That's exactly why this place means so much to many of us. It's not just about coffee, it's about connection, respect, and space to breathe." Sophie smiled, her eyes bright. "I hope he finds that peace again." Across the room, a group of artists gathered near a window table, animatedly discussing the impact of the article. Their conversation revolved around the tension between creative expression and the pressures of public expectation, a theme that resonated deeply with each of them. One of them, a painter named Julian, leaned forward earnestly. "Elias's story reminds me that art isn't just about recognition. It's about truth, vulnerability, and sometimes sacrifice." Another, a poet named Lilar, added, "Ear and the courage to step away from the spotlight to preserve that truth. It's something we all struggle with." Meanwhile, the reporter from the City Times returned to the cafe, this time with a more subdued demeanor. She approached Clara, a hint of concern shadowing her features. The response to the article has been overwhelming, as she admitted. People want more. Interviews, appearances, explanations. It's like the city is hungry for a piece of Elias. Clara sighed softly. That hunger can be dangerous. It can consume the very person people admire. The reporter nodded. I want to protect that story's integrity, but the demand is relentless. As the day unfolded, the cafe became a microcosm of the larger world's conflicting desires, to know and to leave alone, to celebrate and to respect. Patrons debated the ethics of fame, privacy, and the responsibility of the media. The cafe's walls seemed to absorb these conversations, bearing silent witness to the complex dance of public fascination and personal boundaries. In the midst of this, Clara found herself approached by Martin, the regular who had first identified Elias. His normally jovial demeanor was tempered by a thoughtful seriousness. You know, he began, I've seen a lot of public figures come and go, but this feels different. Elias isn't just a celebrity, he's a person who's asking for understanding. Clara smiled gently. Exactly. And it's up to us, in whatever way we can, to honor that. Later, as afternoon light softened and shadows lengthened, a subtle shift occurred. Patrons who had been eager to discuss and dissect began to quiet, replaced by a collective sense of reflection. It was at this moment that the cafe door opened, and to Clara's surprise, Elias Hart himself stepped inside. The hat and scarf were gone, replaced by a simple jacket and an open, unguarded expression. He moved toward the counter, where Clara greeted him with a warm, welcoming smile. I thought I might find a moment of peace here, he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of recent days. Clara nodded. You're always welcome. He took a seat near the window, gazing out as the familiar rhythms of the cafe enveloped him. Patrons glanced his way, some shyly, others with quiet respect. The atmosphere was charged yet gentle, a testament to the understanding that had blossomed in his absence. After a few moments, Elias raised his hand slightly, drawing the room's attention. His voice, when he spoke, was steady and sincere. I want to thank all of you for embracing my story with kindness and respect. It's not easy to share such a personal journey, especially when so many eyes are watching. But your support has reminded me that there are spaces where creativity and privacy can coexist. The room responded with a soft murmur of approval, a collective acknowledgement of the delicate balance he described. He continued, This cafe has become more than a refuge for me. It's a symbol of the quiet moments we all need to recharge and reconnect with ourselves. Clara felt a swell of emotion as she listened, the depth of his words resonating in the shared space. Elias looked around, his gaze settling on familiar faces. I hope my story encourages others to seek their own sanctuaries, to find courage in vulnerability and strength in solitude. As he spoke, the cafe seemed to breathe in unison, the tension of recent days easing into a calm understanding. Later, as the afternoon wore on, Elias engaged in quiet conversations with a few patrons, sharing insights and listening with an openness that deepened the connection between artist and audience. Clara observed from behind the counter, heartened by the unfolding scene. The clash between fame and privacy had given way to a fragile harmony, one built on honesty and mutual respect. Yet, beneath the surface, Clara remained aware of the challenges ahead. The world beyond the Nook would continue to press, eager for stories and glimpses into the lives of those who captured its imagination. For now, though, the cafe stood as a sanctuary where Elias Hart, and those who sought him out, could find a moment's respite, a space to breathe and create without fear. As evening settled over the city, the cafe's lights glowed softly, casting a warm embrace over the gathering within. The story of Elias Hart was still unfolding, But here, within these walls, it was marked by understanding, compassion, and the enduring power of human connection. The cafe had settled back into its gentle rhythm, the morning rush long past and the afternoon light softening as it streamed through the windows. The usual hum of conversation filled the air, punctuated by the occasional clink of cups and the quiet sputter of the espresso machine. Yet, beneath this familiar scene lay a renewed sense of calm and understanding, a fragile peace that had been hard-won through the recent day's turbulence. Clara moved behind the counter with a quiet satisfaction, her eyes sweeping over the room that had become more than just a place to serve coffee. It was a sanctuary where stories unfolded, where strangers became confidants, and where even the most elusive souls could find refuge. Near the window, Elias Hart sat in thoughtful silence, his sketchbook once again open before him. The familiar motion of pencil on paper seemed natural, a quiet testament to the sanctuary the cafe had provided. His eyes, once shadowed by the weight of fame and scrutiny, now held a softness, a reflection of the understanding he had found among these walls. Clara approached him gently, setting down a fresh cup of coffee with a smile. "It's good to see you here," as she said softly. Elias looked up, a genuine smile touching his lips. "Thank you, Clara, for everything. This place, it's become more than I ever expected." Their quiet exchange was interrupted by the soft murmur of conversation from nearby tables, where patrons shared their own reflections inspired by the recent events. A young artist named Theo leaned closer to a friend, his voice low but earnest. "Seeing Elias here, so open and real, it reminds me why we create, not for fame, but for connection." His friend nodded thoughtfully. "And for the moments when we find peace in the chaos." Across the room, Sophie sipped her tea, her eyes distant yet serene. "It's rare to find a place where you can just be. I think we all need that somewhere." Clara listened, heartened by the quiet impact the cafe had on its community. The story of Elias Hart had sparked more than curiosity. It had ignited conversations about vulnerability, authenticity, and the importance of respecting boundaries. As the afternoon deepened, the cafe's door chimed softly, admitting Martin, the ever-watchful regular. He paused by the counter, casting a warm smile toward Clara. "You've done something special here," he remarked. "This place has become a beacon for respect and understanding." Clara returned his smile with a nod. "It's a shared effort. Everyone who walks through these doors contributes to it." The day wore on, and as twilight began to drape the city in hues of gold and indigo, the cafe's atmosphere grew even more intimate. Elias closed his sketchbook and rose, approaching Clara once more. "I feel ready to face the world again," he said quietly. "Not because the glare has lessened, but because I found a place where I can return, to recharge, to create, to be myself." Clara's eyes glistened with emotion. "You'll always have that here." Outside, the city lights blinked alive, but inside the Nook, the glow was warmer, softer, a reflection of the connections forged and the respect earned. As Elias gathered his things to leave, several patrons offered nods and smiles, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had witnessed. For a moment, the boundaries between artist and audience blurred, replaced by something more profound, a shared human experience. The door closed gently behind him, and the cafe exhaled, settling once again into its quiet grace. Clara stood behind the counter, surveying the room that had become a haven, not just for Elias Hart, but for all who sought a space of kindness and understanding amid the noise of the world. In that moment, she knew that the Nook was more than a cafe. It was a sanctuary where stories intertwined, where respect and empathy reigned, and where, amid the complexities of life, moments of peace could still be found. And as the city outside buzzed with endless stories yet to be told, within these walls, one story had found its gentle resolution, a testament to the enduring power of human connection and the quiet strength of sanctuary. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.